Welcome to Discover Indie Film. I'm Jeff Howard, and this is going to be a really good podcast, particularly for me, because I have Betsy DeFries and Jerry Beek with me. Hello, you two.
Hi, how are you?
We are on Zoom because I'm in the Los Angeles area and you're in the San Francisco Bay Area. So we're all in California, but we are, 4 or 5 hour drive apart.
Yeah.
And you are on this podcast because you two made the film Allure, which played at the Sherman Oaks Film Festival in December of 2024 in the short film animation category. You took home 2 very well-deserved awards. You won the Filmmakers Award for Outstanding Short Film Animation and also the Filmmakers Award for Outstanding Direction Animation for the 2 of you as co-directors. And I'll add that just in case you didn't read the fine print on our website or our emails, the Filmmakers Awards are given out by festival alumni. So it's a jury of active filmmakers who have their work on the festival circuit. So I think it's a really wonderful award because it's truly from your peers. It's fellow creatives. Whereas honestly, the grand jury awards that everyone makes a big deal about, that's by the selection committee, and we're all too old and too out of touch. So the younger, hipper jury loved your film. I love your film. I was telling you before we started recording what an honor it was to have it at the festival. Your film makes me cry, not gonna lie. In a good way. It's a good cry.
Yeah.
Amusingly, I now, because you submitted through Film Freeway and you explained some of the inspirations for the film, but before I get to the inspirations and before we get to your life story, I just want to ask, is there somewhere where people can watch it yet, or you're still on the festival circuit?
It's still on the festival circuit, but it is on the website. So it's on littlefluffyclouds.com. And people can just go and see it, and they can see all the other films, Yellowstone 88, Song of Fire, and, As the River Flows, and different films.
A lot of projects that we've done in the past.
Films up.
And also, it's a big website, so a lot of descriptions, also making-ofs, videos. So if you want to know a little bit how we work, you can see that there as well.
Oh, I'm going to check that out because, I haven't checked out your website because, of course, I just get to watch your screener through our systems. But I can tell you that just the connection, I love so much. Honestly, I love everything about your film. I think it's just wonderful in every way. And of course, the connection between humans and our pets are so strong. And your film is about a little astronaut. And I love that you're astronaut. I'm going to praise you off the bat. I love that the astronaut is genderless. It's just, right?
That's right.
In fact, I had fun with a couple of jury members by saying, are you picturing a boy or girl inside there? And when they said boy, I go, well, that's bias.
Yeah.
Or you don't even know the age.
Yeah, you don't know the age.
I mean, in a way, it looks like a kid at the same time drives a car.
You're right. I even said boy, but yeah, it's true. That's an astronaut. We don't send children into space.
No.
But in children's minds, they do go to space.
Yeah, it's an idea.
Yeah,
it's a fantasy.
But I can tell you, I believe it opened the block it was in, probably a block of 4 films, and on a 75-foot beautiful DCP projection screen, when the dog's head lowers and the human's head lowers because they're separated across time and space at this point, I just wept. I just weep, because. It's just so, and it's so wonderfully. I got to tell, I'm really looking forward to your sharing the process because the look is so beautiful, and it's just so wonderfully, I want to say painted, even though I realize it's digital, but I don't want to say it's designed. It feel like there's something very, very organic and beautiful about it, and you do what amazes me that talented animators can do, which is you make this. I just feel like that is a dog, I feel the dog's emotions, and I just can't imagine how hard that is to design.
Yeah, I mean, it's The interesting thing is like when you talk about it, like about the dog, is you don't want to over animate it. It's kind of like you create images that have enough space for people to project their own feelings on. So, the reason, here we have an astronaut flying into space. This is about the loss of a pet, a dog, but I'm not an astronaut. It's not a super personal. It's a personal story. The emotions are personal, but it's not like I didn't design myself and and made it like just about me. It's about people's feelings. It's a more general story, and I think everybody can. That's why a lot of people cry when they see this. People have been through this, and when they feel like their emotions are understood, and I see it on the screen, I think that creates a really strong feeling. And it's the same thing. And that's, I think, what you said about the astronaut. Is it a boy or a girl or what is it? You don't know.
It's a junior astronaut. That's what it is.
It could be you. But the same thing with the dog. So the dog is not like overly emoted. It kind of like, it's just there, it's just like.
It's not, but also because the human in the story with only two characters, and we hear the voice of a countdown person, but other than that, there's no dialogue. Because the human is behind a helmet, really the dog is the character that the audience feels the strongest connection to, right? Like that felt very intentional to me, that the human is only able to express really with tilts of their head.
The funny thing is, like, it's always great in this podcast because you talk about your films and suddenly you realize, like, why did I do that? Why does this character have a helmet? I mean, you can't show. This is a movie about emotions, and you put a helmet on a character, so you cannot show any emotions. But what you can do is show the reflection in the helmet, and I think that last scene when you see the reflection of the dog in that helmet, that is the thing, the projection of each other on top of each other. You see him reflected in the dog's eyes, and you see the dog reflected in his helmet. Eyes, yeah. But you don't see him crying. You don't see a little tear going down. And
it's more effective because of this, right? It is.
I think so.
It is.
You don't need the third tear.
I mean, it's honestly, this is like you can already tell. Like, I feel like there should be a film school class on this because it shows that. And I mean, I actually lost a very dear pet about a little over a year ago as well. Mine was a bunny rabbit.
Well, yeah.
But a film about loss is one thing, but instead of hitting the nail on the head by creating an analogy, by using metaphor, by just having them separate and miss each other, the longing of loss is. I feel like it's a better viewing. It's a more meaningful experience because you're not just saying, "Look how sad it is when you lose a pet." You're saying,
you kind of try to not just illustrate the feeling, but bring it out in people.
Yeah,
it's not
allow a space for it to exist because people have a tendency to try to hide that side of themselves. It's very interesting that Jon Stewart, the comedian, when he did his show and dedicated it to his dog, which is a little after when we lost Jax, he basically cried his way through the whole show. And people were so moved by it because he gave himself the space to show that emotion, which is so important. We so often are like, we're too hip, we're too cool, we're too busy, or whatever we are, and we don't allow ourselves that space, to show emotion.
And that's, I think also that's the way this film was made. It's not like we were in this process of like
Of grieving.
of grieving. So then you make your animation in that process. You kind of like it becomes like a healing process. Basically, you're not really thinking about like, oh, I'm going to make a movie. You're kind of doing what you do. You're an artist. So what else? What else are you going to
Right.
do?
Well, before I ask when the story idea first came to you, let's get actually back. Let's follow. I'll be true to my word and ask about your personal history. So this is clearly a lot of work goes into a film like this, and a lot of one doesn't have the skills to make a film like this because you woke up one morning and said it'd be fun to animate. So which of you would like to share? Were you both creatives as young people? Was it always a life in the arts was intended for you? What's and go ahead and share where you grew up too.
I'll go first just because I did not have a creative upbringing. I was not allowed to do any artwork. I was not allowed to play piano, both of which I do now, and found that I had a real talent for. So, my parents were more concentrated on me becoming the first Prime Minister of England. They wanted an academic child. They didn't want any frivolity. So I had to fight against that. So it wasn't until I came to the United States and I'd always loved film and always loved animation. You see the new dog going by.
Yes, I feel bad. I feel bad for the people who didn't see the well-timed dog passing behind you. But.
Yes. And
so did you come to the USA after university, or?
I came during. I did a time out here at UC Berkeley from my alma mater in the University of Sussex at Falmouth, which is on the East Downs of England, and then as soon as I could, I came right back to get any job I could to work here, to be in California. Yeah.
Yeah, in Northern California, the Bay Area is so wonderful. It really is. I'm guilty of being one of the Angelinos. It is always funny to me when people from the Bay Area are like, they don't like LA and they throw insults at me. I'm like, that's fine because I think where you're from is beautiful. but
I don't know.
I understand the being once you've spent some time at Berkeley, when you've spent some time in that area, I totally understand. So you just moved there, and then when did the artist in you get to come out?
Well, it was quite a while. It was not. I mean, I went through like I was always doing art at that point. I fell in with artists in San Francisco, and was quite successful as an artist. Receiving quite a few grants. In fact, Nancy Pelosi gave me my first huge grant, which was when the NEA still gave individual grants.
So that was when she was a senator, not mayor of San Francisco?
I don't even know if she was a senator at that time. I still have the letter. She signs herself. Somebody...
Oh, wait, she wasn't a senator. She was a representative. That's right. She was a representative.
I don't know that she was at that time. I think she was still just an individual, as it were. But she signed the letter. Well, somebody signed the letter, Mrs. Pelosi and Miss DeFries. And she crossed out Miss DeFries. She wrote Betsy. And she crossed out Mrs. Pelosi and wrote Nancy at the bottom on the award letter, which was pretty funny. She's a lovely woman. And
very cool. And wait, let me ask, because you talked about art. Are you talking about painting? Are you talking about sculpture?
I did paint. I was really a mixed media artist. I did installations and site-specific work and painting. And she... A number of years ago, I ran into her and she did ask me, what did you do with that money, which was a vast amount of money at that time. And I said, I lived off it. I didn't do one piece of artwork. I paid the rent. I just basically survived on it. It gave me 2 years worth of survival, which is essential for an artist. So,
that's huge. That's and especially in the United States where there's often really a huge lack of public funding for art and support for artists.
Yeah. So I went through this whole thing of nightclubs and theaters and stuff like that. eventually I worked at ILM for a little while, and then Paramount Pictures and Apple Computer and places like that. And then eventually I went to work at Colossal Pictures, which is where we met. And then we formed the company from there. But I'm going to let Jerry tell you about his more stellar and more formal training, I would say.
Well, I've right before Jerry jumps in, I'm just going to add that your talent must be abundantly clear, because I know so many people try to get that very humble, brief explanation. I think every step of the way, it's quite impressive.
It actually is.
Quite a struggle.
No, it's impressive because it's a lot of different lives he has lived, and then you have a lot of experience that you can
that you bring to your own stories,
experience, and a lot of maturity. I know a lot of talented artists. I've over the last 30-40 years around the entertainment industry, a lot of talented artists who can't make that step into working in other environments. And when you start mentioning Colossal Pictures and ILM and things, that I think that actually shows a dynamic breadth of ability in a way.
Yeah.
She did forget to mention that she's an award-winning poet.
Yeah, well, now I am. Okay.
Sometimes your partner does a much better job of
He gets 10%.
Yeah, I mean, she literally won a ton of awards for a poem that she wrote, and she writes a lot of poetry, and she's a really good writer.
It's funny. It's too late now. One day, if I ever have a couple on again, I'll say, okay, you tell your partner's story, and then your partner will tell your story, and then we'll see how that worked out.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to write your own to tell your own story, I think. So you're kind of bored with it already.
Yeah.
There you go.
So now it's your turn.
Yeah. So I did study art, and it was like when computer animation kind of started out. I studied in Utrecht in Holland, and from there I went to London to the moving picture company. And then I went back to Amsterdam and set up a department at a post-production facility.
So you had a focus on animation in the beginning?
Well, I wanted to become a graphic designer.
Graphic design, okay.
And I did that for a couple of months, and then I missed the storytelling big time. I was like...
You always did your own animation.
Yeah, I was always...
Were you a storyteller as a young person? Like when you were growing up? Were you the type of kid that was...
Covered that pretty quickly, It's kind of like when you do something and you miss something, then you know, like, oh, I missed that, so I should be doing that. And storytelling was for me like a single frame for me didn't work that well. I always liked drawing, I always liked painting, but I always felt like there needed to be continuation. I remember I used to be with my uncle at my grandma's house, and we would draw comic books. I'd do one frame, and he would do the next frame, and I would do the next frame, and we built a story that way. So, if I look at that, it's like, yeah, it was pretty obvious. But I just didn't know that because, I didn't come from a family of artists. So there was nobody really that said like, hey, you know what, you should do this. I kind of had to figure that one out myself. So I went to Utrecht, studied arts, and then and did animation and started working with computers because I always liked computers and stuff like that. And then the moving picture company in its early days, that was a lot of fun. The stuff that was happening in London at that time in the special effects and animation industry was just wild. Everybody was inventing stuff. It was a lot of fun.
Wait, you won a big award there in London?
Okay.
Yeah, he did. He won a big award there. He was like the
best newcomer.
Best newcomer in the industry when he was there in London. That one.
Wow, and that's industry wide, so not just for design or animation, but
there were different artists from different. There was an architect and industrial designers, and for me it was in animation, and it was a lot of fun because I was working on a short film, my first short film. And somebody was trying to reach me all the time, and I didn't have time to talk to anyone. I had no idea what it was about. But I had won this award, and I was trying to get hold of me. It was like, I don't have time to come over. I'm working on this film. Come on. But yeah, that was great. So then I went to Amsterdam, set up a department for a post-production facility called Conde Video, and animation was still, computer graphics was still kind of new.
It was nascent, yeah.
Yeah, so we started. I worked with a couple of great creatives that were kind of curious. So we did a couple of commercials that did really well, and I was kind of noticed in America. So I came over to America for SIGGRAPH. SIGGRAPH was like this yearly convention for computer graphics animation. So
it moves around. Yes, it moves.
Yeah, it moves around. Yeah, it still does. Yeah. It was a big...
Actually, I'm gonna ask a nerdy question. What was there? It sounds like you're probably the kind of artist who had to evolve with like what kind of software was available when you started? Because I remember when Flash animation first came in.
Way before that. We're talking about Waveform, built by Alias. So I worked, before it was called Maya, it was Alias, and we worked on one of the older versions. I remember we were at the moving picture company and we got the laytest thing, ray tracing. That just came out with ray tracing. We faked it all before that. So I remember when the software came in and we tried to render reflections, I was like, wow. These were the times where you actually... When you want to animate something in Alias, you had to program it, compile it, and then render it.
Right, actual code.
Yeah. And not really difficult code, but it was still code.
Yeah.
So it was not like intuitive. Things took a long time,
As opposed to just being able to draw it, which is so free.
You had to have, you had to have.
You have to, again, well-rounded, right? You have to work in, be your own technician in a way.
Yeah, but also there was a new industry, so there was no standard yet. So there were a lot of things that you could bring to the table. So like the first couple of animations that I did were, kind of new for people, they hadn't seen things like that. So that was great. So I ended up in Amsterdam. Did that for 4 years, and then also came to America. And I was first going to work at ILM, but then I met people at Colossal Pictures. And Colossal Pictures was a really great studio, hand-drawn stuff, like a lot of stop motion, all kinds of stuff, live action. And so I decided to go there. That looked like a lot of fun for me. And that's where I met Betsy. And we were there. I was there. I think I was at Colossal Pictures less than a year when we started our own studio, Little Fluffy Clouds. And our idea was basically to do some projects and fund our own stuff,
Which we're still doing today.
And we're still doing it. Our company is now like at 20-something.
28 years. 29 years old.
Yeah.
If you can
so nearly 30, nearly 3 decades.
Next year's like 30, I think.
But we're still...
And in a way, it sounds like you created Little Fluffy Clouds almost as your just for personal projects mostly.
Well, no,
you made commercials and things.
Well, we represent.
Right. So it was actually, you started a business. It wasn't a boutique.
It's been a successful business. Really, it's been pretty amazing. I don't know that we would have ever predicted that we would still be going at this juncture and the success of the company, it's just always been a 2-person plus dog company. Because
that's so wonderful.
We didn't want to be managers. We didn't want to hire in a bunch of people. I didn't want to have to find work for other people. I know that sounds terribly selfish, but I wanted to be able to create and be able to do that too.
So we've always created together, and people always ask but what did you do and what did she do? And so we decided to start Little Fluffy Clouds also to be represented as Little Fluffy Clouds. So we never wanted to be represented as Jerry or Betsy. It was always like Little Fluffy Cloud. And at that time, there was 25 years ago, nobody did that. Directors were like names. Now you see that more like, creative duos and creative teams that are promote themselves under an umbrella name, And so that's what we've always done. And, a lot of people never knew who Little Fluffy Clouds were.
And still don't in some ways.
Have no idea.
Right. In their mind, Little Fluffy Cow, it could be in a five stories in a tower somewhere full of people cranking away.
Yeah.
But it's really just two artists collaborating.
Yeah. It is kind of interesting as we still meet people and they sort of sometimes talk about the work and when we say, we're Little Fluffy Clouds, they cannot believe it. It's really funny. It has this whole mythology about it. I don't know so much now in the industry because I think things are changing.
Yeah.
Everybody, there's so much, things are so ubiquitous now. There's so much out there and it's about to change even more with the advent of AI, which I don't really want to go down that rabbit hole, but it is changing.
No, but I mean, it was also like, because we were in the transition when smaller studios started to appear. It used to be always like big animation studios. It was always like 100 people, boom. And when we started our company, it was just the two of us, and people were like, how are you going to do that? And we did commercials for Coca-Cola, for all kinds of stuff, and big productions. But we were so much more efficient. We had such a different approach in production. And,
and we always use the latest techniques because we could.
And we had to.
We had to like cut corners. Yeah. And, we were like the first people to jettison 3/4-inch tapes and stuff like that.
And do everything online. And go totally digital.
Go online.
Because it was too expensive to send FedEx. So we had to
we couldn't afford it.
We had to create a website and we had to, so that's what we did.
Right, but also in a way, by being two people working together, you also were able to adapt more quickly. It sounds like, right? Because if they're an animation studio with 120 people on the payroll, can't suddenly say, okay, well, let's shift and learn this new software came out, and this new possibility of sharing our work through the cloud came out. Let's adapt. Like it sounds like you fortunately were able to adapt so quickly.
Well, it is a funny story because, I mean, we had to adapt. I mean, first of all, if you're small, you have to. So you have to be flexible. But there was one time we had to do a commercial and that needed specific software. And it was like when you still work with cell animators and computer graphics and that hadn't figured out yet how to bring those together, how to line them up. So we got this commercial in-house where that needed to happen. And the cell animators were in Canada and we were in California.
It was Chuck Gamage, who's very well known for Jessica Rabbit. So he did Jessica Rabbit.
So we had to write a piece of software. So we had these old selling graphics computers, we had a laser printer and us. And we had to write this software and we had 3 days to do it.
Nobody had told us that, but we knew we had to.
Yeah, we had
This is a Coca-Cola commercial and it has a pretty tight
Yeah. So I basically started the program, see how I could change what the laser printer was doing till I figured out how to program the laser printer. And then I basically made a plan. And then, you had to write it all in C++. And I wrote this piece of software. And then we used that to animate. And then you went straight into production and animated.
Which we called Diana, by the way.
Yeah, we called it Diana.
Digital to analog.
But it also we created an event kind of around the time that Princess Diana.
Yes, Princess Diana
died.
Yeah, so we called it Diana in her honor.
So it's kind of you have to write your own tools because there was nothing there. And you promised your client that you could do it. So you better do it.
And Chuck was waiting at the other end
you have these.
Where is it?
Yeah, these traditional animators, and it really, really worked. We used that software on a bunch of commercials.
So he would send us the frames. We would print that out and put our bit on there.
No, the other way.
The other way. Sorry, the other way around. Yeah, you should be explaining.
It
got shipped back to him at his end.
So we printed out every frame of this 3D animation. And then it went to the 2D people, and they would draw, use that as underlayment and line that up. And then they drew the characters in the 3D environment, and then it came back, and then we put it all together. And it was all about reference, so how that it all lined up perfectly to the pixel. That was the trick, and all we had was a laser printer, not like specific printers and all that kind of stuff. So it's that kind of stuff that is fun.
So this is funny. We met. So Chuck came out. We had never met him, but he came out and we all had dinner together. And he came up to us in the restaurant, and I put my hand out to shake his hand, and he went,
misalignment.
Yeah, misalignment. He just made this like really funny joke. We had to peg. We had to imagine that we were the 2D animators and peg the frames, and it was just hilarious. And we
get it. No, because when you every time you say the word laser printer, I mean, in my mind, I think about my laser printer, and how easily it gets inaccurate, right? How easily it can just shift. And when you say to the pixel, I'm amazed.
But that's like, I mean, a lot of people in that time had to be that creative because there were a lot of the tools were not there, or they were incomplete, and people
we were inventing them basically as we went along.
And people had to create their own pipelines, and that's something that I saw happen when I worked at the moving picture company. All those guys were like, figuring things out at night. Like, oh my God, how are we going to do this? There's just nothing out there, and then they would program it, and then commercials were made, and everyone was blown away. Like, how did I do that? And then we would all end up in the pub somewhere. And all these animators and share that information and talk about it, of course.
We should concentrate on that. Anyway,
So that's how Little Fluffy Clouds got started. It's a long story, but
No, it's that's the joy of this podcast is we don't. I didn't ask you if you have to get somewhere, but I have a lot of time, and this is a wonderful story. Here comes my capitalist American side. Was there a temptation to turn like some of the stuff you developed into like a software company and sell your software to others?
Like we knew how to do that.
I guess, that's a movie. Yeah, that's a whole world of problems.
Yeah, we should have done that actually, because it was something that Disney used on the I don't know which one was the Little Mermaid, was it, with the Hydra?
No, the another one, Hercules.
But they had this very complicated way, and they spent 2 years figuring out. I think it was Roger Goulding that was in charge of it, and we were asked to go to a conference and talk about Diana, which we did, and they were also there talking about their software, and they couldn't believe that we had basically done the same job as them in about 3 days flat, because we had to, where they spent 2 years in development doing it. And that is what happens when you have a really big company. You've got to go through a lot of hoops. And I mean, both software capable of doing the similar thing, but ours was done quickly and is not owned by Disney. And no, we never did. I don't know. It's like, if anybody wants it out there, give me a call.
You don't need it anymore. But it's just the great thing about having a small studio and what you said, like being nimble, is kind of like you're kind of forced to focus. If you have a deadline, you make good decisions really quickly. If you have a really tight deadline, it doesn't always mean that your project is going to be compromised. A lot of times it's not, because you have to focus and you don't second guess yourself. So you kind of go more with your gut feeling. You make better decisions. So,
no, for sure. And I look as at the film festival level, obviously I understand deadlines, and I understand. Yeah, it causes focus, and it causes.
Yeah,
whatever. Yeah, necessity is a mother of invention.
So that's a different dynamic when
you're small.
And I think that
there's a huge pipeline when you are a large company, and there is a very, very nimble pipeline when you're small. There just has to be. And, that's basically the essence of it.
Also,
hoops to jump through.
Yeah. Also, as an art, so you have production companies and you have artists, and a production company will have a certain kind of style, but an individual artist will have a really strong style, because it's you. And I think it's valuable not only in your own projects, but I also think it's valuable in when you work with corporate clients even. It's a lot of times what you do is you solve problems for people, communication problems. And the most important thing in communication is to be personable. And I think if your art and your design is personable, it communicates better. And that's I think smaller companies can be, smaller teams, creative people can be very powerful.
Yeah. And when you have a clearly defined style that clients can recognize, I mean, that does make you like they know what they're going to get.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes if you work with a huge company that can do any style in the world because they have so many different artists working there, it's probably a lot harder to know exactly what you're going to get.
Yeah, I think so.
I think, though, we do a lot of, we're quite diverse in style because we would get bored to do the same thing all the time. Although there's the head of a CIFA here, Carl Cohen, he always says that there isn't one thing that he sees of ours where he doesn't instantly recognize that it's Little Fluffy Clouds doing it, because there's something about it that we do have a style, or we do have some motif, shall we say, that runs through that that he can always recognize, which I suppose is a compliment.
But I think that's a huge compliment, right?
Even though you do.
He's really recognizing your voice in a way, right? Like as an artist, well, I'll think of the music analogy, right? Like it doesn't matter if Paul McCartney did a rock song or a sweet song or this or that. I recognize the voice.
It's that personality that you bring with you, all the things that happened to you before, and that's what I'm saying. Like I think that personality sometimes can get lost if you have a really large studio. It could be fun to work in a large studio because you've got a lot of colleagues. It's lively, it's fun.
Mm-hmm. You learn,
learn from each other. So that's all very exciting. But if you are looking to create your own style, to have your own voice, I think that's a lot harder to do in a large studio. How did we get here?
I like to think of it more like, Picasso has different oeuvres, but you will always know that that's a Picasso. And while I'm not saying we're as good as Picasso, we're certainly not paid as much, but, there's definitely, if you look through all of the different pages on the website, you'll see so many different styles. But I think you can see, I think Carl is right. You can see that. Yeah. So there is that.
Absolutely. And it sounds like all along you were really able to balance creativity with what would I say, like technical prowess and some business acumen. Like it sounds like you've been able to walk a very balanced line in life of keeping the creative while being an artist and a business person at the same time is a hard challenge.
Yes,
it's a little bit like running your own farm, isn't it? It's about sustainability. It's about like creating a livelihood for yourself. And, it's not always just like creating. It's also like, it's running a business. And
it's also about knowing your own worth. That is very hard to do now. I get it. But I would say I'm an excellent negotiator when it comes to money, with the commercial side of things. I might give a lot of stuff away when we're just doing things for ourselves or for nonprofits. But when there are companies that I feel like, okay, they come up, I'm quite a tough negotiator and always have been, even before this company, with Apple, with all the different companies I've worked for, and the projects I've done. Yeah, which have been, many and varied, shall we say.
Again, this is I just want to say it's impressive. How often do you meet a poet who's also an excellent negotiator? Maybe all the time. Maybe I shouldn't sell poets short.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because like you said, it's knowing your value and knowing that, if Coca-Cola needs something in 3 days, Coca-Cola can afford
to pay that.
To pay yes. for the amount of work that's going to take.
This is something. When I worked for Apple, I went into my boss and I asked him for a raise, and he said, "You're being paid quite a bit of money. I mean, you're being paid as much as all the top, artists basically that we have." And I said, "Yes, but I am giving money away on the street to people who need it. So every dime that you give me, that at least half of that is going to somebody on the street, and you can feel better about that, and I can feel better about working here." And he said, "I have no argument for that. You got your raise." And, you have to be creative, of course, in the way you say that, but it is kind of interesting to do that.
Yeah, it is a difficult thing when you're an artist to, you have to
know
paid.
Your worth.
Yeah, you have to get paid for it.
You have to, and oh my goodness, we live in a world where, particularly in this country, but where people are constantly asking artists to work for nothing.
Yeah.
Like we have this really interesting project. It's like,
or it'll be good on your reel. If you need something.
Yeah, I have this really interesting insurance quote that I just got on my house. Maybe you'll have a look at that too. It is. I mean, we live in a realistic world. I mean, everybody has healthcare and things like that, and and artists.
It is funny.
Artists have that too.
But of course they can always go elsewhere, and you have to be secure enough to say, okay, then you must do that. I always leave it nicely. I leave the door open for them to come back, but I don't do it for next to nothing.
So
are you telling me should?
So I also think, I mean, that's also why we like to do our own projects too. It's like to create a style, because if you don't create your own project and you only work for clients, then they are going to dictate
your style.
Your style, and you have to create your own films to step away from all that.
That also brings in clients, doesn't it?
And then brings in clients, yeah.
We did a piece, As the River Flows, which is about river otters, which we did for the River Otter Ecology Project. And that piece was seen by people at Airbus, and then they brought like a slew of work to us on the strength of seeing that project, which is kind of what you want.
But the reason why I want that is because then a client comes to you for your design skills and for your style. So you have a really good working relationship from the get-go. They like what you do, and they know you can give it to them. And if you find each other, that's always the best.
Yeah.
If you just have to kind of like do these cold pitches to jobs, and
which I can't.
And they don't. It's just like they need something to be executed.
Yeah, no, it's a radically different working relationship for a company or a client to say, I'm coming to you for what I've seen you can do, not coming to you and saying, can you do what I need? And then you've got to prove it to them that you can, right? Like it is a very different dynamic and that is and it's wonderful that by being creative and making your own work, you probably continue to grow as artists.
Yeah.
And therefore, by continuing to grow, and then you're showing potential clients even more breadth of work. Yeah.
Yeah, and also like when you do your own projects, you can try out different techniques that you have never had the chance to do, different styles, different way of storytelling. So it's very important for our company to do our own pieces. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So here's the creative question. So how often does one of you say, I have an idea for our own little short or our own little project? I don't know why I'm calling it little, but you know what I mean? Like is there a conscious decision? Okay, now we've done a couple client projects in a row. Now it's time for one of ours, or it's just when an idea strikes you, it's so good. Now you must do it.
It really, whenever it comes,
Yeah, it's really whenever it
it's like
comes.
what you don't want to do is sit next to each other and say like, okay, let's hash something out now. It's something that needs to be told, that you feel like, okay, we need this.
Yeah, it needs to ferment. Also, you have an idea, and we share that idea, and then it ferments over a period of time. And sometimes it's like in the hopper for a long time before we actually have time to work on it.
And it's also not like we do these projects like we start and we finish it. A lot of times we work on it, then we have to jump on a commercial project, and then we get back. And you know how it is when you get back, you have to redo half of the scenes because you look at it again like.
or Peter Coyote. Or you managed to get Peter Coyote, who was our neighbor, to record the poem or the prose or whatever for you. And the way he has recorded it blows your mind. And then you're like, holy cow, we've got to go back in and change all this and put these scenes in and add this and that and the other. It's like, well, every time we see Peter, it's like, we know we're going to be in for another, weeks and months of work, basically.
It's so funny. A friend of mine who lived in the Bay Area for a long time always told me, a friend from school always talked about Peter Coyote, that she met him in the Bay Area and he was the loveliest person.
Yeah, he was our neighbor for a long time.
Wow.
And he was very, very fond of Jax, interestingly enough. He thought Jax, he's a Zen Buddhist master. I don't know if you know that. As well as being an actor and the voice, as I always call him, the voice of PBS,
Ken Burns.
The voice of Ken Burns, so he thought that Jax was a fellow old soul. And Jax did live to be a very venerable old age, 17 and a half. And so it was kind of interesting. So we have had that sort of in common, and that. He's now moved. He bought himself a little farm in Sonoma.
Smart.
Yeah. He wanted to get further away from people. Yeah.
Understandable. Yeah. I have a college roommate who lives in Sonoma. All right, so no more coincidences. I'll stop bringing them up. So how long a process is it to, and I totally do understand what you mean about you work on something for yourself and then take a break and do something else. But I'm sure, Allure is 3 minutes and 50 seconds. And about how long does a project like that take from the germ of the idea to, do you write out a script or do you just start drawing?
No, we write a script and then we do storyboards, and then we do still frames for designs. And then do
scenes.
Yeah.
So you become your own client in a way.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're very disciplined because of the way we basically had to work, I think, on commercial projects.
The interesting thing, that is the interesting thing though, when you work on your own projects, you do have the freedom to make changes, and you do that. Like you do your whole script, you do your whole storyboard, and then you work on the film, and then things do change. Things like you look at it like, wow, this is really strong. We should move it more in this direction, and you should do that. That's why it's your own project. You don't want to be too disciplined.
You don't want to be too hidebound.
Yeah, so that last scene wasn't there in the design of the two planets.
Really?
Yeah.
And by the way, and you're talking about the perspective where there's the slash in the center, and honestly, and the astronaut is upside down, which is such a wonderful choice.
Yeah, no, those kind of things just happen when you play, with the design and stuff like that.
We actually had it, and then we turned it. Do you remember? We were looking at it. And
you play with that kind of stuff till it feels like, because it is, when when you see films, when they start skewing the perspective, to make you feel uncomfortable or, that kind of stuff. That's the same thing. He's upside down, he's weightless. That's another thing. He's not grounded very well,
Okay.
so your whole world is upside down and, it's that kind of stuff,
Yeah, well, and like, and it would have been perfectly valid to just have a split screen and have them on each side, almost facing each other. But by doing a more by showing your audience, by showing by showing people something they see less often, something more original, it's just there's an impact, right?
I didn't want to do the split screen because I didn't want them to be disconnected.
Yeah.
If you lose your path, you don't lose your connection. Actually, it's almost the opposite. But you lose a lot of the physical stuff. You can't touch your pet anymore. You can't experience new things, but the connection is still there. And that's why, that's why I thought it was important that they kind of could see each other.
It does allude to the duality that there is in life. We've all got this push and pull. I think even, we want to explore. We sometimes forget what we have close to us. That there's a lot of.
Well, that's where the title comes in, Allure. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, we're always being lured.
It is a fascinating title for the film.
Yeah, I mean, he's allured by the moon.
Yeah.
He wants to go.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's the first. And I have to say, as a fan of the film, as someone who, by the way, I guess I haven't said it yet, but like I watch submissions in our little TV room. And then when something's, by the way, my wife, I often joke with my wife that her number one thing is animation. Like I'm always like, if I risk showing her animation, she yells at me if it doesn't get into the festival. But not really. But so I watched yours, and then of course I showed it to her, and then I saw it in the theater, and then I watched it again this morning. So like on repeated viewings, one of the things that impresses me most as far as the storytelling is that very first scene where you see the dog's understanding when the astronaut explains, "I'm going there."
Yeah.
And like already you sense the dog's sense of loss.
Well, because the dog thinks that it is going with him.
Oh, it thinks it's going with
the junior astronaut, and then the astronaut basically says, "No, I'm going." And then you see him put his head down, like,
yeah, exactly.
You're leaving me behind, which is what every dog does when you're going out.
Yeah.
They're like at the window going, "What? You have left me behind."
And then they fall asleep.
Yeah, of course, but you know.
And then when you come home, they're like, "Oh, I never thought you'd be back."
Yeah.
So I'm so glad.
Yes. So yeah, it's kind of, it is, that's interesting, but there is that push and pull of life. I can, you may have even watched it more than me. I find it every time I watch it, I cry because of the loss, and it's also very beautiful to look at. I'm so happy with the way it looks.
Yeah, well, and I always back up in spite of the.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just going to add that, like, in spite of, because the film is more about separation than loss, right? Like, by the way, in my silly, optimistic brain, I'm like, it's okay. The astronaut's coming back.
Yes.
They'll be reunited someday. They're just apart temporarily. That's what my heart wants to believe. But I do agree with that. The Flaming Lips song that. Happiness makes you cry, that something beautiful makes like I think it's the beauty of it too. It's the beauty of the moment. I mean, they are sad emotions, but it's also sort of the beauty of it.
Yeah, it's also, I mean, it's built up. I mean, if you look at the entire animation, the whole story arc, that's what you look at. It's the beginning of the introduction, that together, but then 3/4 of the entire animation is spent of him traveling further and further and further and further away.
Yeah.
it's first in his car. Those scenes take forever.
Not he.
And then the astronaut is standing in front of the rocket, and then he does this long gangway, kind of like walks through that.
Exaggeratedly long, yeah?
Yeah, and so it's all about that distance, that bigger distance that's being created.
It's also about seduction and the allure of this huge technology, this huge idea. And I think that is, that's a human, it's a failing as well as a success. There's a real duality there. There we go off to space, and then we ignore what's going on Earth, which is definitely happening. But there's this real, there's a real duality.
I think that's more to do with we both from Europe. So we traveled to another continent.
You both left something behind.
Yeah.
Yeah, you leave something behind, and you leave friends, family, culture behind, like a lot of people do in America. So but it is something that you do that because of the allure of a new life and other thing, but it doesn't come without cost. And I think that's something. I think that's why it also came into this story. What I said before, like all these personal things.
Yeah, you bring your own. Yeah.
That's what makes it art. That's what makes it.
I think so.
Yeah, beautiful. It's very funny. I'm just bringing so much personal stuff to this chat, but like we have a kid who's going to college in the fall.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I can't help but think of this person who I've helped raise from age 5 to 17 is now getting on the rocket, right? Like,
yeah.
Going to leave us behind.
and that's exactly, I think this film happened to be about a dog and a person, but it translates to all kinds of things.
Yeah, when you make something that's emotionally true, there's really no limit.
Yeah,
to the things that it can represent.
Yeah, and then people connect with your film. I think that's important.
Yeah,
don't tell people what to think. It's kind of like give them the opportunity to think and
to think,
to reflect or whatever.
Yeah. But everybody cries, without a doubt. It's amazing.
Well, it is a joke that it's almost like a computer game cheat code to use a dog because, dogs are just in our hearts, are they not?
They need so much to
hard not to laugh. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, but how could one not cry at this film?
It's amazing. People have. I sent it first to our rep to have a look at in New York, and he said, "What?" He wrote back immediately and texted me, "Why do you have to make me cry?"
What are you going to do?
Like, what is this? It was, and of course, he had lost his dog quite a few years, and his dog and our dog were sick at the same time, but our dog survived and went on and on and on and on, and Phoebe, his dog, did not, and he was like, devastated when he watched it the first time, and then he started sending it out. I said, "Don't send it out. I haven't sent it to anybody yet." He's like, "Well, I just wanted this person to see it. I just wanted that person to see it." So everybody on the East Coast was blubbing.
But and also like that's what's so great about festivals like your own. It's like we make these films and you want to show it to people, and that's difficult, to get it out there to people, for people to see it. Yeah, to bang it on your own website, that's one thing. It's really great, but when people see it, like it's always kind of like the audience on film festivals. Great bunch of people that really love the art form. So it's such a great audience.
They're there, and it would have been lovely to have you there in person too. I believe it was a packed house, and to feel the mood of 60, 70 people in a room experiencing this together, and then
that is a lot of fun, and so those are the people that we really want to reach, people that really love this kind of stuff, and it's great that we can do that.
Film festivals are fantastic.
Yeah.
And unlike your representation, I'm grateful to everyone who makes me cry, because you know what I mean. Like there's I just think it's an emotion that it's cathartic. It is it's a positive experience. Even though I understand the joke of saying, "Why do you always make me cry?" But yeah, it's I'm always grateful to people who help me feel that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, I know Perry was too. That's for sure. Yes,
So what about one more question specifically about Allure? Well, in a way, or just your work in general, which is, so do you also use do you experiment? Are you trying to push yourselves artistically, like with the look and things, or at this point, like I'm just curious, like when you're doing your own project instead of one for a client, do you actually really play even harder with the medium?
I think so. Yeah.
I mean, we don't consciously do it, though, I don't think. But when I look back on our own projects, well, in fact, sometimes when I look back on poor old clients' projects, we're taking it to an extreme that I can't believe that a client has allowed us to do. Actually, sometimes, like Airbus, I was like, wow, I couldn't believe that and it was such a huge success. There was a piece we did for Airbus that was also done in conjunction with CESAR, which is the European Space Agency. And it was a huge conference in Helsinki. And it went over so well. People applauded it. I mean, she rushed out. The gal that we worked for, she rushed out to text us to tell us that people were applauding and laughing, and they couldn't believe it.
That is kind of like
such a success.
Yeah, that's kind of like that emotional connection. And I think that you see that with animators that have been animated for a long time. The technology, even though it's always challenging, you at some point know, like, however challenging it is, there are many ways to solve this problem. You're not going to be worried about it anymore. But you do understand that the storytelling, that's the hard part. Everybody knows, like, it's easy to start a story. It's very hard to end one. What's your ending?
Well,
you see so many even films on television, like, oh, that's a great start, and then kind of like, didn't go anywhere. It's those are the challenges now for us. I think that you really want to solve, that you really want to nail on the head, I think.
Oh no, you're absolutely speaking my language. Half the time when I'm screening submissions for the festivals at home, as a member of the jury, I actually have a film will begin. And I'll love it, and I'll say to my partner on the couch with me, I'm like, well, I really hope they wrote a good ending, because it ruins it. Like that last feeling is really what you carry with you.
Yeah,
it's the hardest thing. How are you going to do it? Are you going to give away all the answers, or are you going to leave it at a certain way and really still need some certain satisfaction? It's tough. It's really
and you want it emotionally gratifying, but also unpredictable, right? You don't want people certain they know exactly where it's going, but
yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of cliche, actually. So predictability is not always a bad thing, I think. You can work with that. It's a language. It's a visual language, basically. That's what it is. What people call cliches is actually a language. And you should use that sometimes, but use it well, because you can still be creative and original with something that's even predictable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, so are there more in the pipeline? More? Is there a stack of ideas, or really or do you pursue? If you choose not to pursue them, do they just?
Well, it's at the moment we are really busy work-wise, so
got a big project.
We don't really have time to think about it.
But I have been thinking about a sort of series of, where we can make it easier on ourselves by doing, short little pieces that actually connect to each other. So they could be a really longer piece, or, But we're always thinking in terms of that, of seasons and, that kind of connection, aren't we? Really?
Yeah, but not. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those time periods that's something.
It's earning money time.
It's earning money.
Yeah, because last year wasn't great for earning money.
Yeah.
And which happens, and somehow, we've got this big project on that is going part of the way through this year, and then we will have time to turn our attention. Although we're always having ideas, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm always writing poems, so we can always look at any of my poems and make any of them into an animation.
That's very true. Very true. We get those on occasion, and they're yeah.
Well, you did show Yellowstone '88 Song of Fire, which was about the fires in Yellowstone Park in 1988. That basically it was like the first of the big climate change fires that took place.
Yeah,
and
that was a big project.
That was a big project.
It was a 7.5 minute animation, and that had a lot of interesting technologies in it. That was technically
very challenging.
Very challenging, yeah.
And and we had a friend of ours who plays in a band in Dublin score it for us, and he was tearing his hair out because he had never done anything that big, and said to me, I'll do anything that you want me to do, but please don't have it be that long again. He was just like tearing his hair out trying to get it done. But Peter loved it. Peter, it was the first time he'd actually performed a spoken word. As I said, now you're a spoken word artist. And then it inspired him to have a bunch of he didn't write poems really, but he got an editor and he had all this stuff, and he had a book published called Tongue of a Crow. And that poem, he told me, inspired him to do that. Can you take my poems and then give it to your editor and I'll publish?
Yeah, I mean that was a fun project, Yellowstone, because that was done with different creatives. It was really like, we had a story. I was doing the design, and suddenly out of the blue, Betsy wrote this poem, and I had no idea that she was going to do that. And so we decided to animate the poem instead of like doing the story. And then we worked with Mark Murphy to do the music, and he did this. We kind of told him what the story was about and kind of what kind of emotion we were looking for, but we didn't direct him like what kind of music he was supposed to make. Yeah. So he did his own thing, which was just mind-blowing and something completely different than I had in mind, which is a great thing. And then Peter did his own reading of the poem, which was totally different. So you have all these surprises of other artists working with you on a project that makes it into something that... And
that piece was just the four of us.
Yeah.
It was partially done during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So we couldn't even meet with each other.
But we had no idea where that was going to end up, because at some point we had to give up control to like other artists and like, let's see, And that's great when you work with other artists.
And they push you in certain ways, and we encourage, because we know these people, to push against us. It's too easy to just hire somebody in and then they're like, okay, what is it that you want me to do?
Yeah.
I want you to bring what you do best to the table and push against me. I can always say, or we can always say, we have the final say, but most of the time they're coming with something. I mean, it's their expertise. That music is Mark's expertise.
I mean, everybody wants to grow. Everybody wants to do something like what I said before. Like, we want to do new stuff, and so do they. And everybody needs that room to grow and have something, to be proud of. So there was a lot of fun, that project as well. So
we purposefully did not write, or I purposefully did not write a poem for Allure, and we had it be, basically almost sans dialogue, except for just the countdown, the NASA countdown, which is is actually NASA's, and from one of the moon landings, of course. And so, so that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And I do love the
music.
The music. And you said you play piano. Is that?
It's not me.
Not you. Okay.
That's someone who goes by the name of Sea Tools. And it was an ambient piece.
It's quite lovely. It's quite lovely.
It was so haunting, and it just fit the idea of it so well. So, yeah.
But I was going to add, I kind of love the Chaplin-esque-ness of it, of the, just, I mean, in a way, it's almost silent film acting between your two characters.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that too. And, I didn't realize until actually you asking the question about favorite films that, of course, there is also, I think, only 2 sentences in the Triplets of Belleville, Belleville Rendezvous, Sylvain Chomet's piece. We worked with Sylvain. He was repped by the same company as us, so we knew him. And I didn't think about it, but in fact, there's only 2 sentences. One of my most favorite sentences in all of film is in that film where the grandma turns to the kid and says, "Is that it then?" Basically, and he says, I think it's over, Grandma." That is the entirety of the dialogue in that film. And I was looking at it last night. I was like laughing.
Yeah.
I thought it's so funny. And of course, we only have the countdown because
and the countdown is actually even quieter than the music, I believe.
Yeah, it just is. It's just a little bit.
It's really a texture. Really, the countdown's feels like a texture. Yeah.
It is. That's all it is.
Really. Yeah, I mean that's. I love doing sound. I love doing sound design. I mean, not the music, but all the sound design underneath it. That is so much fun as a storyteller to do, especially as an animator, because first of all, it's real time. You don't have to wait weeks. You just sit there and do all this stuff, and you can create so many atmospheres. I love doing that. That's one of my favorite things, like doing our own movies, do the sound design.
You do. You always do the sound design.
I always do the sound design.
Yeah, he's got into it.
Very cool. Right. Because, like you said, obviously the rendering times and things, it's a lot less. And what you do is not very immediate. So
no, there's a music you can play.
Yeah.
I always say, does this work? How should we mix it? And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, anything else you'd like to mention before we jump into that favorites list in the podcast after this one?
I think anything.
Oh yeah.
I just would say it's very colorful. It's very prismatic, as it were. It's a little bit emblematic of the way we do our pieces. They're very colorful. They're not these dull black and white. Not that there's anything wrong, but our personality is more of wanting it to be brighter and prismatic. I mean, I think a lot of our things are like that.
Yeah, something that you have to grow into. I used to work mostly in black and white because it's it's a lot of decisions you don't have to make.
Yes, because it's difficult to.
When you start working in color, and now I love it. I mean, I'm always like dialing it in more and more. I love color.
Yeah, I love color too. Yeah.
All right. Well, at the risk of wasting even more of your day, not wasting your day, but I'll ask one last question before we wrap it up, which is I'm just curious where the name Little Fluffy Clouds came from. Is there a story behind Little Fluffy
Clouds? Yeah, there is actually, because the song Little Fluffy Clouds is a song by the Orb, which was basically a rave anthem. I was really into raves, going to raves, and I love the music of the Orb. And we were listening to it. I mean, there's a bit of a story behind it, which I won't go into, but when we thought we should name the company Little Fluffy Clouds because we loved the song, and then we would have our own theme song. I actually called the Orb because in those days you could get a hold of someone and chat with them. It wasn't like we didn't have influencers and celebrities. You just said people working. And so I called them and I said, hey, you know what? I'm over here in California. I'm thinking to use the name and take the domain name. And they didn't know what the hell I was talking about. So I had to explain what that meant, websites, the whole 9 yards. And whatever, go ahead. So we did. And they've not regretted it. I send things to them occasionally. So and they're having quite a revival right now. So they've gone out on the road again and using that song. But it is an actual song in which they sampled Ricky Lee Jones speaking, and she sued them, and they lost. They didn't lose. She lost the lawsuit.
It was one of the
because
first
it was
lawsuits.
a public domain.
Yeah, it was one of the first lawsuits about sampling.
Sampling.
Sampling
exactly.
other people's.
Yeah, but once you've done something publicly and it's been broadcast, then it goes into the public domain, basically. So everything we say today will be in the public domain.
So my reason, why I wanted to have a name like that is I have a pretty bad memory for names, very bad memory for names, but not for stories. And Little Fluffy Cloud is a story. It's a picture. It's not a name, it's an image.
Yeah.
And
nobody forgets it. They get it wrong. They call it Pink Fuzzy Slippers,
whatever,
which we always say is our subsidiary. They call it Fluffy, Puffy, whatever. I mean, it's amazing the names that people come up. But it goes into the brain somehow.
It's absolutely a visual cue. Yeah, it's a description.
Yeah, it's a description of something.
Yeah. People thought we were crazy. I think our rep at the time was horrified that we were going to call the company that. And we were like,
right.
Jerry had this story about
instead of some amalgamation of last names. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Van de Vries Incorporated doesn't have the same feeling.
Yes, and many people have named their companies Big, whatever, after they saw we were little. But we've been quite happy with it. I don't want to have to change it ever. It's fine.
That's fine.
It's a great name.
Yeah, and it expresses the personality of the work.
True.
Yeah, it does. I can't even wrap my head around how well it I don't know. I guess
the only thing that we didn't
things
think
don't
about,
have to be analyzed. Yeah,
it's a very long name.
Oh, it's 18 characters. You have to type the whole thing
every
out.
time you do any design for your company, it's Little Fluffy Cloud. It's so long.
Oh yeah, and did you have to grab a couple misspellings so you can redirect them to the correct spelling?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then you can do LFC, but then you have Liverpool Football Club.
Yeah.
Oh no, we always get in. Yeah, the acronyms always.
Yeah.
There's only so many acronyms when you're using the English alphabet or the Latin alphabet, I guess I should call it. But anyway, I will. Well, people know to look up littlefluffyclouds.com, and I assume it's always at Little Fluffy Clouds on social media.
Actually, know whether it is because people have taken that a lot.
I think Little Fluffy Clouds animation.
No, on social media you have is it little.fluffy.clouds? I don't know.
It's little_fluffy_clouds.
Exactly.
That's what he has for Instagram.
Yeah, that's Instagram.
Yeah.
So in the show notes for this, we'll put a link. To both your Instagram and your website, because why not?
Yeah, but just go to the website. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the website.
I've got to do a Blue Sky one now.
Yeah.
Now everybody's deserted everything on Blue Sky.
You have now set me up wonderfully for my wrap for my ending spiel, which is well, first, thank you, Betsy, thank you, Jerry, for this chat, and thank you everyone for listening to the Discover Indie Film podcast. If you want to learn more about the podcast, just go to discoverindiefilm.com, and on social media, it's always at DIFwins. It is on Blue Sky. And I am no longer on anything but Blue Sky personally. So I'll just say, if you want to yell at me, I don't check the Instagram or the Facebook or any of that anymore. And we deleted the X account. But
very good.
So did we.
My lovely podcast producer Karina checks the Instagram and Facebook, and I'm just Hefe111 at Blue Sky. That's me. If someone wants to tell me, you should have asked better questions. But anyway, so that's discoveryindiefilm.com. And by the way, I met these two wonderful artists because their film Allure was at the Sherman Oaks Film Festival. The film festivals are run by discoverindiefilm.org. The Discover Indie Film Foundation is the nonprofit. So if people are interested in a nonprofit that supports independent arts, you can go to discoverindiefilm.org, and we're trying to do more with that. So the two festivals, of course, we already mentioned Sherman Oaks Film Festival that we hold every December, where Allure won Outstanding Short Film Animation and Outstanding Direction for Animation. If you want to learn more about that festival, you just go to ShermanOaksFF.com, and it's at ShermanOaksFF on social media, because Sherman Oaks Film Festival is too darn long. That's actually the website, but ShermanOaksFF.com redirects to the one that's way too long. And oh my goodness, I can't even tell you how many letters are in ShermanOaksFilmFestival.com. But and this year is our 10th anniversary, so it was 10 years ago that we grabbed a much too long website name. And every June, we also hold a festival called Film Invasion Los Angeles. And if people want to learn more about that, you go to filminvasionla.com, and it's at Film Invasion LA on social media. And that one is having its 10th anniversary this year as well. And then the exciting news is, if you, we always talked with people in other cities about film invasions, and in January of 2026, there will be Film Invasion Lima, Peru. Which
exciting.
I think it's really cool. I've seen pictures of the theater that's going to be rented. So I'm working with a team down there, and they're lovely people, and very excited. I get to fly to Lima, Peru next January.
Lucky
for
you.
a festival that I don't have to run. I just have to help them out a little.
Yeah.
That's great.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
And I think that's all. All right. Well, Jerry and Betsy, thank you both so much. And for everyone listening, the podcast after this one in the Discover Indie Film feed, wherever you're listening, will be these two lovely people talking about favorite films and things. So that'll be a fun one too. Well, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone for listening.